You're standing in line at the post office. The person at the counter is asking complicated questions. The clerk is patient but slow. Behind you, someone sighs loudly. You feel your jaw tighten. Your breath becomes shallow. A small heat rises in your chest, and you notice how quickly the body prepares for a fight that will never happen. This is where patience lives, not in grand spiritual victories, but in the tightness of your shoulders while you wait. Patience is often misunderstood. We think of it as passive endurance, gritting our teeth until the difficult moment passes. We imagine it requires us to suppress what we feel, to smile through discomfort, to pretend we are not bothered. But this kind of patience is exhausting. It builds pressure inside us. It turns waiting into suffering. Real patience is different. It does not clench. It does not hold its breath. It meets difficulty without adding the second layer of resentment, without the story that this should not be happening, that we deserve better, that someone has wronged us by making us wait. Think of a river moving around a stone. The water does not resent the obstacle. It does not try to push through with force. It simply continues finding its way along the edges, wearing the stone smooth over years. The river's power is not in aggression. It is in continuation without resistance. When you are stuck in traffic, your body responds as if you are in danger. Your heart rate increases. Stress hormones flood your system. Your mind begins to narrate, "This is unfair. I should have left earlier. That driver is incompetent. I will be late and people will judge me." The traffic has not changed, but you have added a thick layer of suffering on top of simple waiting. Patience asks you to notice this, not to fix it or transcend it, but simply to see it clearly. The tightness in your chest, the heat in your face, the speed of your thoughts. When you notice without judgment, something shifts. The experience is still unpleasant, but it is no longer compounded by your war against it. You can feel your feet on the ground. You can notice the sensation of your hands on the steering wheel. You can hear the sound of the engine, the distant hum of other cars. You are here, in this moment, waiting. That is all. The Buddha spoke of patience as one of the highest virtues. He called it khanti, which means endurance, forbearance, the ability to remain steady in the face of difficulty. But he did not mean endurance through force. He meant the capacity to meet what arises without the reflex of aversion, without the immediate contraction that says, "This must stop now." When someone speaks to you with irritation, patience is the gap between their words and your reaction. In that gap, you can feel the impulse to defend, to correct, to match their tone. You can notice how the body prepares to fight. And you can choose, not from suppression, but from clarity, to let the impulse pass through without acting on it. This is not weakness. It is the opposite. It takes tremendous strength to feel anger and not be controlled by it. It takes awareness to recognize that your discomfort does not require an immediate solution, that you can sit with unease without collapsing or lashing out. The river continues around the stone. It does not announce its patience. It does not congratulate itself for not forcing through. It simply moves, and over time, the stone becomes smooth. You can bring your attention to your breath now. Not changing it, just noticing. The coolness as air enters, the warmth as it leaves. The small pause between breaths. This is the rhythm of patience. Breath does not rush. It does not resent the need to continue. It simply happens again and again, sustaining you without complaint. Patience is not about waiting for life to become easier. It is about meeting life as it is, without the constant demand that it be different. When you stop fighting the present moment, you discover something unexpected. The moment itself is bearable. It is your resistance that makes it unbearable. We will look more closely now at what happens in the body when patience is absent, and what becomes possible when we learn to soften around difficulty instead of bracing against it. You are waiting in line and the person ahead of you is moving slowly, or the website will not load, or someone promised to call by noon and it is now evening. The body tightens, the breath shortens. There is a low hum of irritation, sometimes louder, and underneath it a feeling of being trapped. The world is not cooperating. It refuses to move at the speed you need it to move. This is impatience. It arrives as restlessness in the legs, heat in the chest, a clenching in the jaw. It whispers that something is wrong, that you are losing time, that if things do not change soon you will be left behind or forgotten or diminished in some way. The mind begins to argue with what is happening. It insists that the present moment should already be different. The Buddha spoke plainly about this. He said that endurance is one of the most difficult disciplines, but it is to the one who endures that the final victory comes. He did not mean endurance as gritting your teeth or forcing yourself to tolerate what you hate. He meant something quieter. He meant the capacity to be present with difficulty without adding resentment to it. To let the moment be what it is, even when it refuses to move. Impatience is a form of aversion. It is the mind pushing against reality because reality is not arriving quickly enough. You want the light to turn green, the pain to stop, the answer to come, the person to change. And when none of that happens on your schedule, the pushing becomes sharper. You feel the friction of your own resistance. A seed underground in winter is alive but invisible. It does not rush. It does not resent the cold. It simply remains, held by the dark soil, waiting without knowing it is waiting. The conditions are not yet right, and the seed does not argue with that fact. It endures winter not by tolerating it, but by resting inside it. There is no impatience in a seed. You are not a seed, of course. You have a mind that plans and anticipates and compares. But you can notice what the seed reveals. Impatience arises when you believe the present moment is an obstacle to the moment you actually want. The seed does not experience winter as an obstacle to spring. It experiences winter as winter. It does not divide time into the wrong now and the right later. When impatience comes, the instinct is to fix it, to distract yourself, to hurry the other person, to refresh the page again, to fill the silence with noise. But impatience is not a problem to solve. It is a signal. It is the felt experience of aversion meeting a moment that will not yield. You can meet it differently, not by approving of it or by trying to make it go away, but by recognizing it. The next time you feel that tightness, that urge to speed things along, you can name it silently. Impatience is here, not as a judgment, not as a failure, just as a fact. The same way you might notice rain on the window or the sound of a car passing. Impatience is here. This is not about becoming a more patient person. It is about seeing impatience clearly when it arrives. When you name it, you step out of the story it is telling. You stop believing that the problem is the slow cashier or the unanswered email. You see that the problem is the friction between what is happening and what you want to be happening. And in that seeing, something shifts. The impatience does not vanish, but it loses some of its grip. The seed underground does not know when spring will come. It does not count the days. It simply remains alive in the dark, and when the conditions change, it responds. Not because it was patient, but because it was present. Endurance, in the way the Buddha meant it, is not about waiting for later. It is about being here, fully, even when here is uncomfortable. You might notice impatience today while standing in line, or waiting for water to boil, or listening to someone take a long time to make a point. You might feel it in your body before you name it in your mind. A tightness, a pulling forward. A small, insistent voice saying this should not take this long. When that happens, you do not need to fix it. You do not need to become calm. You only need to notice. Impatience is here. That noticing is the practice. It is small and it is enough. Because once you see impatience as a felt experience rather than a truth about the world, you are no longer trapped inside it. You are simply aware of it. And awareness does not hurry. It does not push. It meets what arises without resentment, the way winter meets the seed. There is a particular way resentment settles into the body. You might notice it first in the jaw, or the shoulders, or the way your breath becomes shallow when a certain name is mentioned. The tightness feels intentional. It feels like strength. We believe that if we hold on to the anger, we are somehow holding on to our dignity. If we let it go, we fear we are letting them off the hook. So we clench. A fist held closed long enough forgets it was ever open. The muscles adapt. The tendons shorten. What began as a choice becomes the only shape the hand knows. You might look at that fist and think it is ready, prepared, protected, but it cannot hold anything new. it cannot receive, it cannot touch without striking. The Buddha spoke of this plainly. He said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Not later, not eventually. Right now in the holding. We rarely see this while it is happening. The heat of the coal feels like the heat of our righteousness. The pain in our hand feels like proof that we were wronged, and we were wronged. That is not in question. But the burning is not coming from the past. It is coming from the grip. Resentment is not just memory, it is active. It is a repeated choice to re-enter the scene of the injury and stand there, rehearsing. You might notice this in the middle of an ordinary day. You are washing dishes or walking to your car, and suddenly you are back in that conversation, that betrayal, that moment of being dismissed. Your heart rate rises, your hands tense. The body does not know the difference between remembering harm and experiencing it now. So it prepares to defend again and again. This is where patience is misunderstood. We think patience means enduring quietly while someone mistreats us. That is not patience. That is suppression, and it has its own kind of violence. Real patience is something else. It is the capacity to feel the heat of anger without letting it dictate your next move. It is the space between the provocation and the response. And within that space, you can begin to ask a different question. Place one hand over your heart, not as a gesture for someone else to see, just as a way of coming back to your own body, and ask quietly, without accusation, what does this resentment think it is protecting? You might be surprised by what surfaces. Often beneath the anger, there is fear, fear of being hurt again, fear of being seen as weak, fear that if you stop guarding, you will be taken advantage of. The resentment believes it is a wall. It believes that by staying hard, it keeps you safe. But notice what that wall actually does. It does not keep harm out. The harm already happened. What the wall does is keep you in. It keeps you in the story of what was done to you. It keeps you returning to the scene, holding the coal, burning your own hand. This is not about forgiving prematurely. It is not about pretending the injury did not matter. It is about seeing clearly that the resentment is not protecting you. It is exhausting you. A fist clenched so long the hand forgets it can open is not strong. It is stuck. When you place your hand over your heart and ask what the resentment is protecting, you are not trying to talk yourself out of anger. You are listening beneath it. You are acknowledging that the anger arose for a reason. It pointed to a boundary that was crossed. It said, "This matters." But once the alarm has been heard, you do not need to keep ringing the bell. The question is not whether you were justified in your anger. You were. The question is whether continuing to carry it is serving you now. And you will know the answer by how your body feels, by the tightness in your chest, by the way your thoughts loop back to the same scenes, by the fatigue that comes from holding a position that requires constant vigilance. Patience, in the Buddhist sense, is not passive. It is the strength to stay present with discomfort without hardening against it. It is the willingness to feel the burn of the coal, and in that feeling, to recognize that you are the one holding it. Not because you are weak, not because you are foolish, but because at some point, the grip became automatic. The hand forgot it could open. What happens when you see resentment this way? Not as your protector, but as a misguided attempt at safety. There is no need to force it away. You do not pry open a clenched fist. You bring warmth to it. You acknowledge what it was trying to do. And slowly, when it is ready, it begins to soften. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A message arrives phrased just wrong enough to sting. The person ahead of you in line fumbles with exact change while you're already late. These moments land fast. The irritation flares before you've even noticed it beginning. Your jaw tightens. Your breath shortens. Words form sharp and ready. This is where patience is supposed to live, but there's no room. The reaction has already filled the space. Between the event and the reaction, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom. This teaching points to something easily missed. We think of patience as enduring something unpleasant for a long time, gritting our teeth through difficulty. But that's not quite it. Real patience begins much earlier, in the instant between what happens and what we do next. That instant is so brief we usually don't see it. The lightning strikes and the thunder follows so quickly they seem like one event. But they're not one event. There is always a gap, however small. The pause between lightning and thunder, a gap that holds the whole sky. When you see lightning on the horizon and wait for the sound, you can feel that space. The flash has happened. The thunder hasn't arrived yet. Everything is suspended. The sky holds both. This is what's available in irritation. The event has happened. The reaction hasn't landed yet, but we collapse the gap so fast we don't notice it was there. Watch what happens the next time something small bothers you. A notification interrupts your focus. Someone speaks over you in a meeting. The Wi-Fi drops just as you're finishing something. Notice how quickly the body responds. Heat in the chest, a pulling sensation in the shoulders. The breath catches or quickens. These are not reactions you're choosing. They're arising on their own, the way thunder follows lightning. But if you look closely, you'll see they don't arrive all at once. The body responds first. Then comes the story about why this is intolerable, why it shouldn't have happened, why this person or situation is wrong. Then comes the urge to fix it, to speak, to move, to make the discomfort stop. Each of these is a separate wave, and between the waves there is space. When irritation arises, take one full breath before speaking or moving. This is not about suppressing what you feel. It's not about pretending you're calm when you're not. It's about finding the gap that's already there. One breath is enough to feel it. Breathe in while the irritation is present. Breathe out while it's still present. Don't try to make it go away. Just let the breath move through the same space the irritation is moving through. What happens in that breath is subtle. The irritation doesn't vanish, but it stops being the only thing. The breath is also there. The body is also there. The room around you is also there. The irritation is still sharp, but it's no longer total. It's one thing among other things. That's the gap opening. You might still speak. You might still need to address what happened. But now there's a chance the words won't come from pure reaction. They might come from something steadier. Or you might notice the irritation wasn't as urgent as it felt. It was just a flash, and the thunder never needed to follow. This doesn't require perfect calm. You don't need to be a monk on a cushion. You just need to catch one breath before the reaction completes itself. That's all. One full cycle of in and out while the irritation is still live in your chest. Try it with something small first. Not the big grievances, not the deep wounds. Just the minor static of a day. The person walking too slowly in front of you, the app that won't load, the slight edge in someone's tone. These are good ground because they're frequent and they're not too heavy. You can practice the gap a dozen times a day without needing a crisis. Each time you take that breath, you're not building patience like a skill you accumulate. You're noticing the space that was always there. The pause between lightning and thunder, a gap that holds the whole sky. The more you notice it, the more available it becomes. Not because you're getting better at patience, but because you're seeing what patience actually is. It's not endurance. It's not restraint. It's the breath you take in the space before the reaction closes. And in that breath, just for a moment, you're free. We often think patience means holding still while something burns inside. We clench our jaw. We tighten our shoulders. We tell ourselves we're being patient, but what we're really doing is building a wall between ourselves and what we feel. This is not patience. This is endurance with resentment quietly gathering behind it. True patience is not about locking yourself in place. It's about staying open when everything in you wants to close. It's the capacity to remain soft in difficulty, to let the difficulty move through you without hardening against it. Bamboo bends in the storm. It doesn't resist the wind by becoming rigid. It yields, and in yielding it survives. The storm passes. The bamboo returns upright, rooted as it was before. When we confuse patience with suppression, we turn what could be flexible into something brittle. We think we're being strong, but we're actually bracing. And bracing takes enormous energy. It tightens the chest. It shortens the breath. It turns waiting into a kind of silent battle. You can feel this in your body right now if you bring attention to it. Think of a moment when you had to wait for something. Maybe you were stuck in traffic. Maybe someone was late. Maybe you were sitting with uncertainty about a decision or a relationship. Notice where your body went. Did your shoulders rise? Did your stomach clench? Did your hands grip something even slightly? That tension is not patience. That's the body preparing for conflict. It's the nervous system saying this should not be happening. And when we hold that stance for long enough, the body starts to believe it. The tightness becomes familiar. We carry it into the next moment of waiting, and the next. Patience, in the way the Mahayana teachings describe it, is something else entirely. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's the active choice to remain open-hearted even when conditions are difficult. It's meeting discomfort without adding resistance to it. The bamboo doesn't fight the wind. It doesn't pretend the wind isn't there. It bends with it, and that bending is its strength. This kind of patience requires awareness. You have to notice when you've started to armor yourself. You have to feel the difference between being present with difficulty and bracing against it. And the body will tell you. If you listen, the body always tells you. So the practice is simple. When you find yourself waiting, when you feel impatience rising, pause. Bring your attention into your body. Scan slowly. Where are you holding tension? Is it in your jaw?
Your neck, your belly, your hands?
Just notice it. Don't judge it. Don't try to fix it immediately. Just feel where the tightness lies. And then consciously soften that place. Not by forcing it to relax, but by letting your awareness rest there with a little kindness. Breathe into it. Imagine the breath moving through that tight spot, the way water moves through a narrow space. Let the softening happen on its own. You're not collapsing. You're not giving up. You're just releasing the grip. This is where patience begins. Not in the mind's decision to be patient, but in the body's willingness to stop bracing. When you soften the tension, something shifts. The situation hasn't changed. The weight is still there, but you're no longer fighting it from the inside. You're present with it. And presence is spacious in a way that resistance never is. Compassion enters here naturally. When you stop armoring yourself, you also stop armoring yourself against others. The person who's late isn't an enemy. The traffic isn't a personal offense. The uncertainty isn't a threat. They're just conditions. They're weather. And you, like bamboo, can bend without breaking. This doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you stop setting boundaries or making choices. It means you stop adding a layer of resentment to everything that doesn't go your way. You stop treating discomfort like a problem that shouldn't exist. Patient presence feels different in the body than armored endurance. One is soft and rooted, the other is hard and shallow. One breathes, the other holds its breath. You can learn to tell the difference, not by thinking about it, but by feeling it. And once you feel it, you can choose. The bamboo doesn't decide in advance how much wind it can handle. It bends with each gust. It returns to center when the gust passes. This is patience. Not a fixed position, but a living responsiveness. Not a wall, but a rhythm. You wake in the morning with a plan. You know what needs to happen. You have decided how the day should unfold, how the conversation should go, how the person should respond. And then the day begins to move in its own direction. The traffic is slow. The email does not arrive. The other person says something you did not expect. And inside you, something tightens. This tightening is not patience wearing thin. It is the belief that you should be able to control what is happening. That if you think hard enough, plan carefully enough, push firmly enough, the world will bend to match the picture in your mind. But the world does not bend that way. And the exhaustion you feel is not from the difficulty of the task. It is from the effort of trying to hold still what is always moving. A river carves through stone not by force, but by persistent, unhurried flow. It does not demand that the canyon open. It does not resent the rock. It moves according to its nature, and over time, the shape of the land changes. The river does not tire because it is not fighting. It is meeting what is there. You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. This is not a metaphor about strategy. It is an observation about where your energy actually belongs. The wind will blow. The conditions will shift. The other person will feel what they feel, say what they say, choose what they choose. You can exhaust yourself trying to stop the wind, or you can notice that the wind is not the problem. The problem is the belief that it should be still. When you try to control what cannot be controlled, you are not being strong. You are clinging to a version of reality that does not exist. And clinging is tiring. It takes constant effort to hold on to something that is already slipping away. Patience is not about waiting passively. It is about seeing clearly what is actually in your hands and what is not. Most of what we call impatience is misplaced effort. We are pushing against conditions we did not create and cannot command. We are resenting the rock for being rock. The river does not resent the stone. It flows around it, over it, through the gaps. And in flowing, it changes what seemed immovable. Not because it forced anything. Because it did not stop moving according to its nature. You might notice this in small moments first. You are waiting for someone to reply. You check your phone. You imagine what they are thinking. You rehearse what you will say next. And none of this changes whether they reply. None of it moves the situation forward. It only keeps you locked in a loop of wanting something to be different than it is. Or you are trying to help someone see something clearly. You explain it one way, then another. You feel the frustration rising because they are not understanding. But their understanding does not arrive on your schedule. It arrives when the conditions are right, and those conditions include things you cannot see or touch. Their readiness, their history, the way their mind is working in this moment. When you release your grip, even for a few minutes, something shifts, not in the situation, in you. The tightness eases. The exhaustion lessens. You are no longer spending energy on what was never yours to move. This is the practice. Identify one thing today you are trying to control. Not something large or abstract, something specific. The outcome of a conversation, the timing of a decision, the way someone else feels about you. And for 5 minutes, practice releasing your grip on it. Not forever, not as a permanent surrender. Just for 5 minutes, let it be as it is. You do not have to like it. You do not have to agree with it. You only have to stop pushing against it for this short span of time. Notice what happens in your body when you stop pushing. Notice the space that opens when you are not holding so tightly. The river moves through the canyon because it does not insist the canyon be flat. It meets the shape of the land and flows according to what is possible. This is not weakness. This is the quiet strength of enduring without resentment, the strength that does not waste itself on what cannot be changed. You will forget this. You will tighten again. You will find yourself pushing, planning, insisting. And when you notice, you can return, not to passivity, not to giving up, to the simple question, is this mine to control? And if it is not, can I adjust my sails instead of cursing the wind? We reach for the phone before the thought completes itself. We turn on music while making tea. We scroll while waiting for water to boil. The silence between one thing and the next has become unbearable, and we have learned to fill it instantly, automatically, without even noticing we are doing it. This is not about being busy. You can sit perfectly still and still be running. The mind reaches forward, backward, sideways. It plans the next hour while this one is still unfolding. It replays yesterday's conversation while today's moment passes unnoticed. The body is here, but attention is everywhere else, and the gap between them grows. Patience is not waiting for something better to arrive. It is the capacity to be here, now, without needing this moment to be different, without filling it, without improving it, without making it mean something or lead somewhere. Just this breath, just this stillness, just the sound of air moving through the room. A pond's surface reflects the sky only when it is undisturbed. When wind ripples across it, the reflection scatters into fragments. When rain falls, the image disappears entirely. The sky has not changed, the water has not changed. But the surface cannot show what is there when it is constantly moving. Your awareness is like that surface. It can reflect what is actually present, but only when it is allowed to settle. And settling requires patience. Not the gritted teeth kind, not the white-knuckled endurance of something unpleasant. The other kind. The kind that does not resist what is here. We have been taught that stillness is wasted time. That silence is emptiness. That if nothing is happening, We should make something happen. So we reach for the next thing, the next distraction, the next task. We check the phone. We open a tab. We start a conversation we do not need to have. Anything to avoid the naked simplicity of just being here. But the Zen teaching says sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. The grass does not grow because you worry about it. It does not grow because you plan for it or visualize it or affirm it into being. It grows because the conditions are present. Sun, soil, water, time. And your sitting quietly does not stop it. Your doing nothing does not prevent it. This is not passivity. This is trust in the way things actually unfold, not forcing, not filling, not managing every gap with effort and noise. Just being present while life continues. The practice is simple, though not easy. Sit in silence for 3 minutes, not to achieve calm, not to become peaceful, not to reach some elevated state, just to sit. Let the silence be what it is. Let the mind do what it does. Let the discomfort arise if it arises. Let the restlessness come if it comes. You do not have to fight it. You do not have to fix it. You are simply noticing what happens when you stop filling the space. When you stop reaching for the next thing. When you allow the moment to be exactly as it is without improvement or commentary or distraction. The impulse to move will come. The urge to check something, to shift position, to open your eyes and get on with it. That impulse is not the problem. The problem is believing you must obey it. You can notice the urge without acting on it. You can feel the discomfort without making it mean something is wrong. The pond does not try to become still. It simply stops being disturbed, and stillness returns by itself. Your awareness is the same. You do not create patience. You stop interrupting it. You stop filling the silence before it has a chance to settle. 3 minutes is enough. Not because 3 minutes will transform you, but because 3 minutes is long enough to meet the discomfort and short enough that you can actually do it. You sit. You breathe. You let the silence be what it is. You let whatever arises simply be there, without needing to do anything about it. Spring comes. The grass grows. Not because you made it happen, because you stopped preventing it. Sit now if you are able, or later when the moment arrives. Let the silence hold you. Let the stillness be enough. Let patience be the quiet strength that does not need to fill every gap. Impatience carries a particular kind of weight. It feels solid, as though the current moment has locked into place and will never shift. The traffic will never move. The pain will never ease. The person will never change. This is the texture of frustration when it hardens into something that feels permanent. But look at clouds crossing the face of the moon. The light dims, the world darkens, and for a moment it seems the brightness has gone. Yet the moon has not moved. The light was never absent. Only the conditions between you and the moon have shifted, and they will shift again. All conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This is not philosophy, it is direct observation. Everything that arises depends on causes and conditions. When those conditions change, the thing itself changes. The traffic moves. The pain lessens. The person responds differently. Or you respond differently. Something always gives. Impatience forgets this. It treats the present difficulty as though it were carved in stone, as though the current arrangement of causes will hold forever. But conditions are never static. They are always in motion, even when the motion is too slow or too subtle to notice in the moment. Think of something that frustrated you a year ago. Not a minor irritation, but something that felt genuinely stuck. Maybe it was a conflict with someone close to you. Maybe it was a physical limitation or a professional obstacle. Maybe it was a habit you could not seem to break. At the time, it likely felt immovable. The frustration had a particular flavor of permanence, a sense that this is just how things are now. And yet, if you look at that situation from where you are now, something has changed. Perhaps the conflict resolved. Perhaps the limitation eased. Perhaps the obstacle dissolved or you found a way around it. Or perhaps nothing external changed at all, but your relationship to it shifted. The situation lost its grip. It stopped feeling like the defining feature of your life. This is not to say the difficulty was unreal or that your frustration was unjustified. It is only to notice that the conditions were not permanent. They moved. They always move. Clouds cross the moon again and again, and each time the dimming feels complete. But the light returns, not because you made it return. Not because you earned it or figured out the right technique. It returns because the nature of clouds is to move, and the nature of the moon is to remain. When frustration arises now, in this present moment, it carries the same illusion. It whispers that this time is different. This time the difficulty will not pass. This time you are truly stuck. The mind does this. It forgets every past instance of change and treats the current moment as the exception. You can test this. When impatience tightens in the chest or the jaw, when the thought arises that nothing will ever shift, pause. Bring to mind one past difficulty that felt just as permanent. Not a vague memory, but something specific. Let the details return. How it felt in the body. What thoughts circled in the mind. How convinced you were that it would last. And then notice what actually happened. Notice how the situation changed, or how you changed, or how both changed together. Notice that the permanence you felt was not accurate. It was a feeling, not a fact. This is not about forcing optimism or convincing yourself that everything will work out in the way you hope. It is about recognizing the difference between what you feel and what is true about the nature of conditions. Feelings can be intense and convincing. They can fill the entire field of awareness. But they are also conditioned. They arise, they persist for a time, and they pass. The practice is simple. When the current struggle feels endless, remember one that was not. Let that memory be specific and real. Let it land not as a concept, but as a lived truth. You have been here before. The conditions changed. They will change again. This does not make the present difficulty disappear. The traffic is still slow. The pain is still present. The person is still frustrating. But the relationship to it softens. The sense of being trapped loosens. You are not waiting for the clouds to move so much as recognizing that movement is already their nature. Patience is not gritting your teeth and enduring. It is seeing clearly that endurance is not required in the way you thought. The moon is still there. The light has not gone. You are simply watching conditions shift, as they always have, as they always will. There is a moment that arrives almost every day. Something does not go the way you planned. A delay, a refusal, a door that will not open. And in that moment, something in you tightens. You push a little harder. You try again with more force. You feel the heat rising in your chest, the frustration gathering like a fist. This is the ordinary response. It feels necessary. It feels like strength. But notice what happens in the body when you meet resistance with force. The jaw sets. The shoulders lift. The breath becomes shallow and quick. You are bracing against the world, and the world, in its way, braces back. The obstacle does not soften, it hardens. The person does not yield, they defend. The situation does not resolve, it calcifies, both sides become stone. Water does not do this. When water meets a stone in its path, it does not crash against it again and again, wearing itself thin. It pauses. It pools for a moment, gathering itself. Then it moves around the stone, testing the edges, finding the smallest gap, the gentlest curve. It does not fight the stone. It does not resent the stone. It simply continues, patient and soft, until it finds its way through. This is not weakness. This is a different kind of strength. It is the strength of not needing to win. The strength of not needing the world to be other than it is right now. When you meet resistance with force, you are insisting that reality bend to your will immediately. You are saying this should not be happening. This should not be here. And reality, which has no interest in your preferences, simply continues as it is. The friction is not between you and the obstacle. The friction is between you and your own insistence. Patience is what remains when that insistence softens. It is not passive. It is not resignation. It is the willingness to stay present with difficulty without adding the second layer of suffering. The layer that says this should not be. You can feel the difference in your body. When you stop pushing, even for a breath, something releases. The chest opens slightly. The jaw unclenches. The mind, which was narrowed to a single point of frustration, widens again. This is equanimity. Not the absence of feeling, but the absence of the fight against feeling. You still notice the obstacle. You still feel the inconvenience, the disappointment, the irritation. But you are not at war with it. You are simply present with it, the way you might be present with rain. Rain is not an insult. It is not a punishment. It is simply what is happening now, and you adjust. You find the umbrella. You change your route. You wait. When you encounter an obstacle today, pause. Just for a moment. Feel where the tightness is. Feel where you are pushing. Then ask yourself quietly, what would softness look like here? Not collapse, not giving up, just softness. What would it mean to stop insisting, just for this breath, that things be different than they are? You might find that the question itself creates a small opening. The obstacle has not changed, but your relationship to it has. You are no longer throwing yourself against it. You are standing still, noticing it, considering it. Sometimes softness looks like stepping back. Sometimes it looks like waiting an hour before responding. Sometimes it looks like saying less instead of more. Sometimes it looks like asking a question instead of making a demand. Water does not have a single strategy. It responds to the shape of what it meets. It is endlessly adaptive because it is not rigid. It does not carry a story about how things should be. It simply moves with what is. This is the practice. Not once, but again and again. Because the habit of force is deep. It will return. You will find yourself pushing again, tightening again, insisting again. And when you notice, you simply pause, you soften. You ask the question again. What would softness look like here? The question is not a demand for an answer. It is an invitation to stop, to feel, to let the body release its grip even slightly. Patience is not about waiting for the obstacle to disappear. It is about discovering that you can be present with the obstacle without becoming hard yourself. That you can meet resistance without becoming resistant. That you can endure without resentment, not because you are strong enough to suppress the resentment, but because the resentment dissolves when you stop feeding it with force. This is the quiet strength, not the strength that overcomes, the strength that does not need to. We tell ourselves we are patient people. We say it often. But the body tells a different story. The jaw tightens when someone speaks too slowly. The shoulders rise when the line does not move. The breath shortens when the child asks the same question for the 5th time. These signals arrive long before the mind admits anything is wrong. The body knows what the mind refuses to see. Listen to it. A tree does not decide when to hold its leaves or when to let them fall. It senses the season through its roots, reading temperature and light, moisture and wind. The knowing comes from below, from contact with the ground. The tree does not argue with autumn. It does not resent the cold. It simply responds to what is already happening in its limbs and bark. We live differently. We live in our heads. We think about patience as if it were a moral achievement, something we either possess or lack. We measure ourselves against an idea of who we should be. Meanwhile, the body is already speaking. The fists clench, the stomach knots, the neck stiffens. These are not failures, they are messages. Patience is not the absence of difficulty. It is the willingness to stay present with what is difficult without adding resentment on top. The body shows us where we are adding that second layer. It shows us where we are bracing against reality instead of meeting it. You can test this right now. Scan your body for tension. Start at the top of your head and move slowly downward. Notice the forehead, the eyes, the jaw. Notice the neck and shoulders. Move through the chest, the belly, the hips. Notice the legs and feet. Somewhere in this landscape there is tightness. Somewhere you are holding. When you find it, breathe into that place. Not to fix it. Not to make it go away. Just to acknowledge it. Just to say quietly, I see you. The breath does not force anything open. It simply arrives like rain on hard ground. It softens what is ready to soften. It leaves the rest alone. This is not a relaxation technique. This is a way of listening. The body speaks in sensation, not in words. Tension is its vocabulary. When we ignore that language, we lose access to the early warnings. We miss the moment when patience is still possible, when we could choose to pause instead of push. By the time the mind notices, we are already deep into reaction. The tree, sensing the season through its roots, does not wait until the branches are bare to respond. It begins the process of letting go long before the first leaf falls. The sap slows, the chlorophyll fades. The connection between leaf and branch loosens gradually. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. We can learn this kind of sensing. We can notice the small tightenings before they become large ones. We can feel the breath shorten before the voice rises. We can catch the jaw clench before the words we will regret. 3 times today, stop and scan your body for tension. It does not matter when. It does not matter where. You might be standing in line. You might be sitting in a meeting. You might be listening to someone you love. Pause. Notice. Breathe into the tightest place without trying to fix it. This practice is simple, but it is not easy. The mind will want to skip over the body and return to thinking. The mind will want to solve the tension, to explain it, to make it mean something. Let the mind do what it does. Keep your attention with the body. Keep your breath with the sensation. What you are doing is reconnecting. You are bridging the gap between what the body knows and what the mind is willing to acknowledge. You are giving yourself information that has always been there, waiting to be noticed. Patience wears thin in the body first. The irritation, the frustration, the edge of resentment, these begin as physical states. They are contractions, tightenings, small refusals to let things be as they are. When we catch them early, we have a choice. We can breathe. We can soften. We can meet the moment without adding our resistance to it. The body is not the enemy of patience. It is the ally. It tells the truth before the mind is ready to hear it. It shows us where we are holding, where we are bracing, where we are already in conflict with what is. So scan. Breathe. Notice, let the body teach you what it has always known. You are waiting in a long line. Your body tightens. Your mind begins to argue with the situation. It should be moving faster. Someone should have planned this better. You should have chosen a different time. The resistance builds, and with it, a quiet exhaustion that has nothing to do with the weight itself. This is the work we do without noticing. We spend enormous energy pushing against what is already here, not changing it, not improving it, just resisting it. The moment itself may be neutral, but our refusal to meet it creates a friction that wears us down. A mountain does not resist the weather. It stands through sun and storm alike. The wind arrives, and the mountain remains. Rain falls, and the mountain does not argue. It does not say the storm should be gentler or the sun should stay longer. It simply stands, and the weather moves through. You might think the mountain is strong because it is solid, but the strength is not in the stone. The strength is in the absence of resistance. The mountain does not brace against what comes. It allows the conditions to be what they are. We are not mountains, but we carry this same capacity. The peace we are looking for does not come from rearranging the circumstances of our lives. It does not come from finally getting the conditions right. It comes from realizing who we are at the deepest level, beneath the layer that argues with reality. When you notice yourself tightening against a moment, pause. Feel where the resistance lies in your body. It might be in your jaw, your shoulders, your breath. The tightness is not the moment itself. It is your refusal of the moment. And that refusal is optional. This does not mean you become passive. It does not mean you stop responding to life or making choices. A mountain stands, but water still flows down its side. Birds still nest in its crevices. Life continues. What stops is the inner argument, the constant insistence that this should not be happening. You can begin to practice this in small ways. For 5 minutes, sit quietly. Let your breath move at its own pace. With each inhale, say silently to yourself this moment. With each exhale, as it is, not as you wish it were. Not as it might become, as it is right now. The words are simple, but the practice asks something of you. It asks you to stop editing, to stop negotiating, to let the moment be exactly what it already is. Your mind will resist. It will say this is too simple, or that nothing is happening, or that you should be feeling something different. Notice that resistance. It is the same resistance you bring to the long line, the delayed train, the conversation that did not go as planned. This moment as it is. You are not trying to make yourself feel calm. You are not trying to manufacture acceptance. You are simply naming what is true. The breath is moving. The body is sitting. Sounds are arriving and fading. Thoughts are appearing. This is the moment as it is. When you meet the moment without resistance, something shifts. Not because the moment has changed, but because you have stopped fighting it. The exhaustion that comes from constant refusal begins to ease. You are still aware of discomfort, of inconvenience, of difficulty, but you are not adding a second layer of suffering on top of it. The mountain stands through sun and storm alike, not because it has trained itself to endure, but because it has never learned to resist. You have learned to resist, but you can also unlearn it, not all at once, not perfectly, but breath by breath, moment by moment. Patience is not gritting your teeth and waiting for things to improve. Patience is the quiet strength of meeting what is here without resentment. It is the capacity to let the moment be as it is, even when it is not what you wanted, especially when it is not what you wanted. This moment as it is. The practice is not about achieving a state. It is about returning, again and again. Each time you notice resistance, you have a choice. You can continue the argument, or you can let it go. You can tighten, or you can soften. You can demand that the weather change, or you can stand like the mountain, letting it move through. The water in the pond does not hurry. It receives the rain without bracing. It holds the leaf that falls. When wind moves across its surface, the water moves. When the wind stops, the water stills again. There is no decision being made. There is only response and then rest. Patience is like this. It does not hold itself rigid against what comes. It does not collapse in bitterness when things take longer than expected. It meets the moment, and then it meets the next one. There is endurance in this, but it is not the endurance of gritting teeth. It is the endurance of water that flows around the stone, year after year, without once resenting the stone for being there. You have been practicing this, whether you knew it or not. Every time you pause before reacting. Every time you let someone finish speaking, even when you already knew what you wanted to say. Every time you sat with discomfort and did not rush to fix it or explain it away. These were not small things. They were the quiet work of patience taking root. And patience does take root. It does not arrive all at once. You do not wake up one morning suddenly free of impatience. Instead, you notice a moment where you would have snapped, and you didn't. You notice a conversation that would have felt unbearable, and it was only difficult. You notice that the gap between impulse and action has widened, just slightly. That gap is where patience lives. It lives in the breath you take before answering. It lives in the pause before you pick up your phone. It lives in the moment you feel frustration rising, and you name it, frustration, and then you do not feed it. You do not make it wrong. You just see it, the way you would see a cloud moving across the sky. It is there, it will pass. You do not have to go with it. This is not suppression. Suppression tightens. Patience softens. When you suppress impatience, you push it down and hope it stays there. When you practice patience, you acknowledge what is present and you choose not to be ruled by it. You let it move through. You return to the breath. You return to the body. You return to what is actually happening, not the story you are telling about what is happening. And what is actually happening is often simpler than the story. The line is long, the person is speaking slowly. The project is taking more time than you planned. These are facts. The suffering comes from the layer you add. The resistance, the commentary, the belief that it should be otherwise. Patience is the practice of meeting the fact without adding the layer. It is seeing clearly, and then responding from that clarity instead of from the noise of wanting things to be different. Over time, this changes you. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way that others will necessarily notice. But you will feel it. You will feel the steadiness that comes from not being thrown by every delay, every inconvenience, every moment that does not go as planned. You will feel the quiet strength of knowing you can endure without becoming bitter. You can wait without collapsing into helplessness. You can stay present even when the present moment is uncomfortable. This is freedom. Not the freedom of having everything go your way. The freedom of not needing it to. And so you return to the water. You return to the image of the pond after the rain has stopped. The surface was disturbed. Now it is settling. You do not have to make it settle. You only have to stop disturbing it. You only have to let it be. Patience is this letting be. It is the trust that things will clarify when they are ready. That you do not have to force the outcome. That you can hold your seat in the middle of uncertainty and not be undone by it. Sit with this for a moment. Feel the ground beneath you. Feel the breath moving in and out. Notice that you are here now and that this moment is enough. It does not need to be more than it is. You do not need to be more than you are. The water receives everything and holds nothing. It is always becoming itself again. If this has been useful, you are welcome to stay. There are other threads to follow, other aspects of the path to explore. But there is no urgency. The work continues whether you move on now or return later. It continues in the way you meet the next moment, and the one after that. For now, let yourself rest. Let the mind settle like silt in still water. Let patience be not a task but a presence. You are already here.